At DePaco Credit Union, we value your health and happiness as much as your financial well-being. We encourage the volunteer spirit by providing DePaco employees with the tools and resources to help grow our communities and support the causes that matter to us. We believe that giving back not only strengthens the places we call home, but also enhances our overall well-being. Well-being is the key to a life worth loving. So when you think about yours, remember that DePaco can help you be well.
All things Hawkeyes. Your all-access pass from the sidelines to the postgame. Iowa's News Now Sports presents Eye on the Hawks. Sponsored by DePaco Community Credit Union and Pin Seekers.
Hey everybody, it is January 21st, and this is a portal is closed, but also people can still commit edition of Eye on the Hawks. Lots going on since 3 weeks ago when Iowa won the ReliaQuest Bowl over Vanderbilt. A lot to get to here on a Wednesday with Mitch Fick, Owen Sebring, Mike Howell, Director Erica running the show. Big thanks as always to DePaco Community Credit Union and Pin Seekers for sponsoring the podcast here at DePaco Studios at Broadcast Park. We'll look into the portal, see the newest edition just in the last couple of hours of this recording on a Wednesday, and how the Hawks have fared so far. We'll also go look way back into mid and late August in our preseason predictions and finally figure out just how wrong we were about so many things. As always, though, if you're watching on the Iowa's News Now YouTube channel, thank you. We got some highlights to show you from Owen's trip to Tampa there, and look at our graphics from back in mid-August, and of course you can make a deep dive on the podcasts on the basketball side as well, and wherever you listen to the audio versions, we are certainly there. Just search Eye on the Hawks, should pop right up. Let's start though by teeing it up as always with Pin Seekers. The final college football polls are out now. The Indiana is at the top of the college football world, your number one team in the country. Iowa, number 17 in the AP and the coaches poll, weren't ranked going into bowl season. They were 23rd in the college football playoff poll, but they are 17th in the AP, 17th in the coaches. A lot of debate over some writers and coaches that didn't have them ranked or where they had them ranked. Kirk Cignetti of the national champion Hoosiers had them 11th in the coaches poll, but fellas, right where they need to be, too high, too low in the final rankings after a 9-4 and bowl win.
I think that is about the sweet spot that you'd expect out of this team. I don't know if I even really considered it very much since we'd been 3 weeks since their last game they actually played. I hadn't really even thought about rankings, but after the fact I was like, oh, that might even be slightly higher than what they actually what the talent would indicate or what they should be. But the highest ranked single digit win team in all of FBS football this season, so no team with 9 wins was higher ranked than Iowa. So it is at least something to say for themselves.
Yeah, Mitch and I were talking before the podcast in the newsroom, and we were saying I don't think you can complain. 17, you weren't really ranked. You weren't ranked at all in the AP poll. You were in the college football playoff a couple weeks. I guess the point that once we started talking about it, I was like, Virginia's at 16. I think Iowa would beat them by 2 scores. And they did beat 15. So maybe you can say Iowa should be the 15th best team in the country.
Mm-hmm. There was a lot of debate over why is Vanderbilt still ahead of Iowa, even though they just went head-to-head. There was all that talk earlier in the year and, might have affected the final playoff rankings of, Notre Dame lost to Miami. And listen, Miami turned out to be, you got to look at the totality, right? Miami had a good defense all year long, and they played about as well as you could ask for against the best teams in the country with a couple wins and took Indiana right to the end.
It certainly cannot be all head-to-head. I understand the people saying, well, then Iowa State should be ranked ahead of Iowa if it's just based on head-to-head rankings.
Ranked higher
it's like
than
those
USC.
social media maps, right? Well, the transitive property all over the place. No, you got to.
TCU's ranked lower than USC. They just beat them. USC's ranked lower than Iowa, and then they beat Iowa.
It
can't be.
Can't be all head-to-head. However, at this point in the season, with that being the last game and the lasting impact, it's they should at least maybe be ahead of them. I think what's more shocking is the people that had Vanderbilt ranked 14th and Iowa not even ranked in the top 25. That's egregious, in my opinion, to say that Vanderbilt, after losing to Iowa, they still deserve to be a top 20 team, and Iowa does not even deserve to be ranked in my top 25. That's outrageous.
You get the feeling that there are some, whether they're writers or coaches in whatever poll, just they handle their stuff and then just kind of backfill how they can. So if they don't have a frame of mind on what's going on, and whether it's as you know as an AP voter, there's a lot to keep track of. If you're on the sports writer side, if you're on the coach's side, you got plenty on your plate already as well, and maybe you're not even casting the ballots, just kind of on your behalf, and maybe you're guiding. It's always going to be an imperfect science, and I think it's just overall, do you look at Iowa, certainly how they were playing at the end of the year, like that felt like better maybe than the 17th team in the country. But again, it's totality, and you just feel good about winning a bowl game, winning 9 games, feeling like in the overall 13-game journey, this was a team that showed they could play with anybody, and they did play with anybody. And, it doesn't really matter what exactly number is next to your name. It's always nicer when it's higher, right? But, you showed a lot, and the fact that they were talking about your program quite a bit on Monday during the national title game, that to me is almost more important than the number, even though the number is what goes in the history books. It's, we talked about it a lot after women's basketball made the runs to back-to-back title games. They didn't get a national championship trophy to put in the case, but holy cow, people talking about Iowa women's basketball, that's a big impact that you can't really make tangible.
Yeah, you look back at those teams, it's like, who are you remembering, Caitlin Clark or the LSU women's basketball team more? I mean, it's hard to say. Right now, maybe it's still LSU, but 10 years down the road, I don't know if that's going to be the case. But for this Iowa team, yeah, I think that they landed right exactly where probably they deserve to be. I think that that's a team that showed that they have the talent to be a top 20 team, hanging with a national champion, hanging with a couple other teams that were ranked a good chunk of the season. I think that is a top 20 caliber program.
Yeah, when you look at who came out on top and you go back to the basketball, I'm sure the coaches and players would be like, yeah, but it'd be nice to have a ring too,
Yeah.
and the fans as well.
I'm not
sure
speaking for Lisa Bluter or Caitlin Clark here.
But no, you guys are right. Like you're going to remember that Iowa team. When you look back at the results, though, it's like, man, Iowa gave Indiana one of the toughest games of the season, and they are college football's best. It's kind of impressive, and just looking at all the other results too. Like we've mentioned so many times, Iowa's a few plays away from the college football playoff, maybe getting in there, causing, playing well or whatever, or a couple plays away from maybe having a 6-6 season. So it was kind of an up and down season and kind of roller coaster. And like Kirk says, that's football. You just don't know what's going to happen. Now we're sitting here at the end of the season. I'm wondering what the future will look like.
Let me ask you guys this question, because there was a colleague of ours who takes some great photos out there at Kinnick Stadium, who posted on X a few weeks ago. He said, you can put it in writing, Kinnick Stadium will host a CFP game in the next 3 years. He said he said you could bookmark that post. Do you buy into that at all? Do you think that is a likelihood? 50% chance? Lower than that? Where would you guys stand on that?
I'd probably go lower, just because I think it's tough to host a game.
Yeah,
and that means you have to have Iowa in the top 8 of the CFP rankings. And if you just look back at Kirk's, not just Kirk, but Iowa, what's that happened at the end of the season? 3 times, maybe 2.
Or maybe there's a feeling that there would be an expansion, and instead of having those offsite games, maybe there's some logistical hopes in there as well.
I wasn't considering that, but
yeah,
that's true.
If that's the case, yeah, they need to get
24 teams.
They need to get more more games on campus.
Top 12.
That should be an incentive of winning a playoff game, even if it is in December in Iowa City. Like, okay, bring in somebody from the SEC or the ACC down there and make them go play in mid-December weather. Or heck, drag it out till January, make them play in 20 below. We'll see the fortitude that gets built there. But yeah, it's a tall order, right? Because no matter what the playoff layout is, you got to earn it. It's a great goal to put out for 3 years. That if even by the end of the decade, can Iowa host a playoff game? It's a cool goal to chase, and the expanded Big Ten's a wild look, but it's possible, and maybe some of these guys that we're going to talk about from the transfer portal can help with that goal.
Yeah, Kirk said at the beginning of the season, he kind of went up there in front of the podium and said, like, we know what we are. We're not Ohio State, and we're not Penn State or whatever. But yeah, making the goal being hosting a college football play. If that's the goal that you have, I mean, I know probably there are Hawkeye fans out there who are like, a goal should be a national championship every year. But boy, still hosting a college football playoff game is like a pretty sweet goal to have for yourself.
I'll tell you what, though, like Indiana winning a national championship has changed a lot of fans' minds about what is real and what is possible. I mean, not even talking about the tremendous turnaround, but they're the first school, I believe. I don't know if you guys know what the blue chip ratio is. It's this formula that Bud Elliott came up with on CBS Cover 3 podcast, and it's like I was telling you this the other day, and I need to go back and read it, but something like since they started recording like stars and recruiting, and we know how that doesn't mean the player's going to be a boom or a bust or whatever. But if a team has the stat was all national champion since, like, I don't know what it is, since they started recruiting, tracking this. They had 50% of the roster 4 and 5 stars because they just pooled talent.
Sure.
And Alabama was doing that, LSU, all those big programs, Michigan, Ohio State. Indiana's was like 8%. Now, all of their high-impact players were transfers, so they were like lower-rated guys.
Sure.
But a lot of them are NFL guys, right? Like D'Angelo Pond's going to play in the NFL.
Yeah.
He was at JMU. He's not highly rated recruit. Fernando Mendoza is going to be the first guy taken off the board. He was a 2-star. So it's a little bit different math. But when you look at it, like they're the first team to like break that blue chip ratio, and I listened to their podcast, Bud was saying it's going to happen eventually, and it just did. Now a lot of programs are thinking they could be the next one, and I don't know how often it's going to happen.
Yeah, that is the phenomena when something like this happens. This is a bad analogy, but like when the Wildcat jumps in the NFL and everyone's like, all right, well, we got to have a Wildcat. And now you wonder how many programs that are like clawing, or maybe they don't have an identity and they're like, okay, if we just blow the whole thing up and I mean, hey, Texas Tech doesn't get the headlines that Indiana did, but Texas Tech kind of did the same thing and just like, all right, let's just pool everything and take a big swing. And who'd they just bring in out of the transfer portal quarterback-wise?
Brennan Sworsby.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge get for them. I mean, they
Louisville?
No, from Cincinnati.
Cincinnati, yeah, that's right. I get those two mixed up.
I mean,
They
that's
were the same uniforms
that's
almost.
a dude. Yeah, I mean, Sorsby's the guy. Hey, we saw it in Iowa City to a certain extent, and certainly saw it, after Rourke had a heck of a year last year for Indiana coming in and out of Ohio, but they got their guy in Mendoza, and it elevated them past to where they were. And a guy like Sorsby can do that for Texas Tech, who's going to lose a bunch. But, man, saw it in Iowa City with Gronowski. When you get your guy and you can be in every game, special things can happen.
I'm looking at the blue chip ratio numbers for every FBS team right now, thanks to puntandrally.com. Would you believe Iowa has a higher blue chip ratio than Indiana?
Yeah, I'd believe it. They have a couple 4-stars, don't they?
For this class?
Well, not
just
just
on the
overall,
roster
just on the
right now?
roster.
Yeah. This was for 2025.
Yosei is a 5, isn't he?
Yeah, Yossi's a 5.
So that's 1.
Yeah, that's
It's probably more than
So
Indiana.
this says their number is 14%.
Okay.
I don't know what that would be for your roster, but it seems like you'd have to have a few on there. Wampa was a
Wampa was a
4-star.
5-star.
Oh, yeah, so 2. Boom. That's all,
Indiana's
all
is
you need.
8%,
Yeah.
which would be 1 or 2 players probably. So Iowa must have maybe a couple more on there, 1 or 2 more.
4 stars, I think, are included too, I believe.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
they've got a couple 4-stars on there
Yeah,
too.
the top 4 were Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, LSU, Oregon.
Usual suspects, right?
there
But
you go.
when you're like Texas, didn't make the CFP. Notre Dame didn't make the CFP. Penn State is 10th.
It doesn't mean
list.
you're going to be good, but it usually
Right.
is a good indicator
Good
of like,
indicator.
here's the pool of teams that can win a national champion.
There you go. Well, Iowa certainly bringing in some more guys out of the transfer portal. Again, the window's closed, but guys can still commit, so we'll see how things go. I believe we've got a 24/7's page up, so thanks to the folks at 24/7 for letting us use this. It says incoming transfers, it's got 13. I believe that number's actually 15 now. You brought in your punter, Phil Pott from Simpson, which is a good get, an All-American there for the Storm. And then, again, just in the last couple hours, Cody Haddad, who's a redshirt freshman safety, was out of Ohio State, didn't play at all for the Buckeyes this year, but was a 4-star coming out of high school there in St. Ignatius in Ohio. And he's added, I think he's the 4th safety now, but you got to look at who they brought in, everybody from Elon to Texas Rio Grande Valley, South Dakota, JMU, a couple guys.
Furman.
Yeah, you got Furman. Listen, buy stock in Evan James maybe. I know I said that about TJ Washington and it didn't work out. And cool story for him going to New Mexico State. David Cobb, who was a heck of a running back from Minnesota about a decade ago, he's his new running backs coach. David Cobb, I'm off track right now, but David Cobb at New Mexico State is the assistant head coach, the running backs coach, and the general manager.
Jeez.
Can you imagine? But that's, so all the best to TJ
We also
there.
have this Mountain West prospect out of Northern Illinois who's joining the Mountain West next year.
Boy, DeKalb is not in the Mountain West. I checked the maps there, but you look at all these guys, and you got the kid from SMU who was there for a couple of years, didn't play. But listen, it's January 21st. What do you think at this time next year? Is there anybody in this list, and you include the punter and the kid coming from Ohio State, is there anybody you think going into 2027 you go, okay, like, we saw some sparks out of this guy at any position? Do you think there's anybody that on that list that you think can come in and do something right away?
Sorry, 2027 or 2026?
I'm talking at this time next year in 2027.
Oh,
looking back at the year.
Who are we going to see flash in 26? Do you think anybody?
I really think. I mean, I'm going to maybe list, if we want to look at the whole list of transfers in and out. The biggest guy that I think the biggest loss I think for Iowa. Well, I think there's a couple of them. Both Allen and Intringer obviously are the biggest losses that they have to the portal. The biggest addition I think for these guys is that wide receiver Tony Diaz from University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. Diaz, as a true freshman, put up just huge numbers for them. I think, 11, 13 touchdowns, something like that. Just put up a bunch of yards in the team's first year playing in FCS football. He's a guy that I think that could come in right away and make an impact. I'm not saying he's going to be a number one receiver, especially with Reese Vanderzee coming back to the roster and with a couple really good tight ends out there. It's not like this guy's going to be the leading receiver or pass catcher, I don't think. But I think he could be a significant weapon for this team, a la he could be a better version of Jacob Gill, I think.
I really like what I've seen. Obviously, when you're watching like highlights from him, it's against lower competition. He had one game where he caught 17 passes.
Yeah.
That's like just insane usage. And when you're watching his highlights, and then you're reminded again he's playing FCS opponents, which some are really good, some go on to play in the NFL, but not everyone does. I didn't see a lot of separation, but what I saw was like he adjusts to make catches, kind of like Reese Vanderzee. Really good at that. And he just goes and grabs the ball,
He's physical for a $176.
Oh, yeah.
Too.
He has a lot of good techniques, too. Like
really
when
impressed with that.
When you're really tight with the corner, not shoving off, but using your hands to kind of get separation. I agree with you, but I'll go with L.J. Phillips. Bringing in a running back, I think kind of shocked a lot of people. You're like, you kind of got this stable. I know two are leaving in Jazz Patterson, and I'm blanking on the other one, T.J. Washington.
Yeah.
But, when he was leading rusher in FCS last year, what was Iowa lacking? Just kind of breakaway, kind of like long runs. And I know Kamari was almost there several times, but get another guy that could have that feature. Like I think he's going to be. I mean, Kamari probably will start. I don't know how they're going to do the workload like that, but do you really want in the Big Ten to have a guy? And I know there's a couple other running backs too, but have like 20, 30 carries. Like I like splitting him up, getting fresh running backs on, and I think he can make a huge impact.
And the way you saw at the beginning of the season, I mean, every week another guy was hurt in that room. So you just you got to have, Omar Young just spent a lot of time in the NFL, and in the NFL, it's rare that you have a Saquon or a Derrick Henry. Like you got to have 2 or 3 guys that can go tout it for 12 or 15 carries a game, and that's all that's going to add to that room is now you feel like you've got at least 4 guys again in Kamari, LJ, you got Xavier Williams, and you got Nathan McNeil. And you got 4 guys that I feel like Omar's got to be confident that he can send out there and get carries and have success. And LJ was fantastic for South Dakota and can be maybe a bit of a Mekhi Sargent who came in out of Iowa Central, I believe it was. Was it Iowa Central or Iowa Western?
I think that was Western.
Western, yeah. He was a Reavers, yeah. And he was tremendous and probably doesn't get talked about enough about his role in Iowa football and the success he had.
Any name you'd like to add to that list outside of the 2 that Mike and I mentioned?
You got 3 offensive linemen that you got to replace, and Trent Wilson out of JMU played a little bit, and feels like that anytime you can bring in, a fluke injury kept Bryce George from being in the mix this year, but you've seen a guy like Rusty Feth coming out of Miami of Ohio, and he was going into his senior year, so he's more experienced. And that's the fun part about this transfer list is that so many of the guys are first and second year players that it was almost, Tyler Barnes basically used it as another high school recruiting thing, or just, kind of looked at it as, okay, junior college guys. You're not bringing in a Gronowski or a Jackson that's got 4 years experience under their belt. You've got guys that, you can start working in on special teams and all that. But, Trent Wilson feels like a kid that, maybe makes an impact right away on a line that George is looking for 3 new starters. And whether it's Tyler Brown out of JMU or Anthony Hawkins out of Villanova, those are 2 guys that really showed a lot. And you got to replace both safeties now, and you brought in a bunch of safeties. And, you got Hudkins that transferred out of Purdue that sat out last year and was banged up for quite a bit out of the year. But, you've got some opportunities there in the secondary for guys to find roles and make impacts. So one of those safeties, I would put Brown and Hawkins up front, and Wilson, I think, could get in there. The offensive line's going to be super, super interesting because you've got a lot of guys that waited behind, just kind of like last year, like, okay, who's going to step in for Mason? Who's going to step in for Connor Colby? You've got Leighton Jones and Cale Winter and, they're really big on all Geyer and Cannon Leonard's 6'9", but you bring in another dude that can compete. So I'll be interested to see how that goes.
In terms of losses, I mean, I'm going to go maybe not out on much of a limb here to say that Brian Allen's their biggest portal loss. Any disagreement there that you would say somebody else is going to be the biggest loss for this team?
I still think Lewis and Cohen. You lose a starter and a captain. That's big. When Brian flashed, he's been doing that since spring of 23. I feel like you're just like, holy cow. But
the funny thing is, those are the two positions that are there's not a lot of depth when you look at it. There's some players like Deanna, obviously Yosei Epineso. You think he's going to be a day one starter next season. But when you look at it, it's like, well, who's going to be the other? Deanna is going to be Kenneth Merriweather. He played a little bit last year. Who's going to play that second D tackle? Is it going to be this North Dakota kid? Or are they going to? Yeah. Is someone else going to sign in?
You get to see Bryce. How he figures in
Bryce,
D2.
I slotted Bryce into one of them. Bryce Hawthorne.
Yeah, I know.
Or Bryce Stevenson, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, no, Bryce Hawthorne.
Okay, yep.
Seeing if he goes in, he came in with riding some momentum early out of South Dakota State. Interested to see a kid like Joseph Anderson on the end for Iowa, or Devon Kennedy or somebody like that who's been here for a few years. One of these names is going to pop out in the spring, and KB and Neiman are going to have somebody that's kind of waiting in the wings and make some impact there on the end. But yeah, that's the tough part, is that defensive line. It's like, okay, everybody go compete, and losing Brian, to that point.
And then you had the linebackers. I mean, I think we're all comfortable with the three linebackers, and
it seems like they are too, because they're not bringing in linebackers.
Yeah. But there's not a lot of production outside of Jaden Montgomery, right? Like there's not a lot of proven see it ball, which again in that position I think we're like most Hawkeye fans are fine. You just haven't seen it. And like you said, you hope two of those safeties hit, so Lutmer can maybe stay at that cash roll where he's super
I'm interested to see what his role morphs into, because again he can
play
do a little bit of anything. But yeah, the linebackers are going to be interesting too. There's so many questions I feel like at the end of the year and in bowl prep about Buffington and what he was doing. We saw Weisskopf flash a little bit, Preston Reese, from the jump against Albany. I was cutting up highlights earlier today. I'm like, oh yeah, he lost his helmet on a special teams tackle and got a finger on a punt. So yeah, that freshman class that they've been talking about since they signed, this is the opportunity now. I think Jaden is locked in at your Mike, but boy, there's going to be some fun there. And that's.
Do you think he plays Mike? Because I was looking at Lystico's prediction. He thinks Cam plays Mike and Jaden moves to weak side.
Yeah, that could work.
But I don't talk to coaches, so I don't know.
You also have Van Kikerix and those guys. Seth's got a room. But again, it's just guys who have been out there on special teams but we saw. I still think about that Music City Bowl hit that Landon had in Nashville a year ago, and it reminds you a little bit of Shire was knocking guys around there on special teams, and then look at the season he had. But yeah, it's going to be fun. There's the cupboards aren't bare, and that's why it's been cool to see. And again, with the revenue sharing, you had to rebuild an entire men's basketball roster, so you couldn't really maybe swing for the fences. You're not going to chase down Malachi Toney now that he's in the portal, right?
Oh, he is? I didn't see that.
He is in the portal. It sounds like maybe Ohio State or Florida. I think there was one other.
Wow.
Yeah. Welcome to the new world, right? But you got to go find some value. Tyler Barnes gets to play a little money ball here, and that's a really intriguing prospect, and you get to see what hits and what doesn't. But that's fun to go find those diamonds in the rough.
Yeah, you mentioned the big name Power 4 guys, and obviously there was a trend of locating FCS lower level talent. But I do think though, when you do find that, and you look at the offer list of some of the guys like Tony Diaz, he came from Texas Rio Grande Valley, like Alabama, Illinois, Kentucky, Arkansas, Virginia Tech offered him. Like when those kind of programs, they all are after that kid, it kind of gives you does it mean he's going to be a 1,000-yard receiver next year or a slam dunk? He has 3 years left of eligibility, I think. No, but
they like something.
I think it gives you that assumption that he's a good player. Same with Tyler Brown, Florida State and UCLA. The running back L.J. Phillips, Penn State, Matt Campbell wanted him, and it was down to Iowa and Penn State. So you're competing with some big programs on some of these players that, and the other safety Xavier Stiles, Pittsburgh was after him. Just to me that's a good indicator of. Now, obviously, it's not a sure thing until they prove it on the field, and we won't know that till,
Might not know until 28. Some of these guys, right?
Kids have multiple years.
That's why I think it's, especially with a new special teams coordinator, even though Polizzi's been in the program now for last year and going back to his grad assistant days. Like, that guy's got to build punt and kick coverage. He's rebuilding that entire special teams unit in a lot of ways. So they get the punter, you get the kicker out of North Dakota State, or was it North Dakota? One of those two.
The kicker was out of North Dakota State.
That's right, yeah. So you got him. You're figuring out returns, but you need coverage guys, and that's what a lot of these guys, particularly those dudes in the secondary, like, you're starting to build that up again, and you've got to, because those linebackers that we're praising, maybe they keep playing special teams, like Rex Roth and some of those guys.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, absolutely. But hey, more the merrier. Start building up those.
I think they actually need another punter too, because isn't Ty Nissen? He was a senior last year. He's gone.
He graduated. Yeah, so you
only have one, and you don't want one punter. So I wonder if they're going to get another one.
Yeah, can't hurt, right?
I mean, not saying that this. I mean, I don't watch Simpson football, so I actually didn't break down his.
I tried to look up. There are not a lot of Simpson football highlights out there because I want to see. He's got that. He had that 78-yarder against Nebraska Wesleyan. I'm like, okay, really? And it wasn't inside the 20. Wow. If I read the stat sheet right, so they must have been like, I don't know, punt it from like your end zone, like
you're out
from
of bounds.
The one. I don't know. Yeah.
Huh.
I just quickly looked, and I think it said he didn't have any punts inside the 20 in that game, which I was like, it's probably a touchback. That's why. It wouldn't count.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Oh, sure.
That makes a lot more sense than
today,
you trying to do.
Mitch remembered how punts work, so that's good.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, hey, he's got a boot, and I'm sure it rolled, but that's, yeah. You can always use two punchers, right?
That's one of those stories that could be a great one. It could be,
Super
a
fun,
Hayden Large type of story. A guy who came from NAIA, this guy who comes from D3. Maybe that's what they're getting, but certainly wouldn't hurt to have somebody else out there to shore you up a little bit.
The only reason I mention that is and I don't know. Like I said, I didn't watch it, but his average was 43, and I feel like you want to extend that to what was Torrey Taylor's, like 49.
Oh gosh,
yeah. Not to compare him to him, but
2023 MVP.
Yeah.
And they could have a freshman coming in that I don't know about. Some freshman punter that's going to be on the roster that I am unaware of.
Yeah. Can't enter the portal. Plenty of guys can still jump in. I don't know how many portals are or how many punters in the portal right now. But, there's just a quick overview of what's coming in. And again, we're not going to see any of these guys for the first time until I feel like open practice is sometime in early April. So we've still got a couple months, maybe 9-10 weeks until we get to see them. But thank you to Pin Seekers as always for teeing it up with us. Or I guess we already did that with the final rankings. Pin Seekers gets another shout out here. It's been 3 weeks since I've done a podcast. These guys are more seasoned than I right now.
Right?
Yeah.
Pin Seekers.
Speaking of going back and doing stuff we already have, let's go look at our preseason predictions from August. We're going to start. If you don't recall, we did our offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year, breakout predictions, bold predictions, kind of season wide, and we went by the games as well. We won't go game by game, but we'll give you a look at what we predicted back there in early August. But we'll start with our preseason offensive player of the year predictions. Owen just got bit by the injury bug again because, hey, starting from Minnesota on, Reese Vanderzee looked
he was awesome.
Like everything you'd want, but Mark Gronowski was our pick, Mike and I.
Reese at the end of the year, after that bowl game, I was just like, man, how many incredible catches did that guy have this year? I feel like there were
everyone down the sideline, you're like, oh, that's it. Like Nebraska, Vanderbilt, like Minnesota Michigan State.
Yep, exactly. Like he had so many huge catches. So it's like, if he had played a full season, maybe you could make a case for him being one of the offensive MVPs. But yeah, it's hard to make that case right now. Got to say, if it's not Gronowski, somebody could say Logan Jones or something, an offensive lineman. It has to be Mark.
Yeah, but it was Mark Gronowski. They'd be wrong.
You could totally say that. Agreed.
No, Logan Jones is great, but it's really hard to give an offensive line the most valuable player because you need all five to work together. So, it's tough, and it's the honest reality. But Mark was like the heart and soul of this team. Mm-hmm. I already forgot since it's been 3 weeks since the bowl game, but he scored so many touchdowns. Was it 30?
He's pushing 30, yeah.
Pushing 30. And, Reese, if he would have been healthy all year, maybe he changes an outcome or two of a game.
And you would have had probably a 1,000-yard rusher in Kamari if he would have stayed healthy. Again, his longest run of the year was that one against Nebraska, and it was like 34, 37 yards, and he still was a 5-yard a carry back and broke over 800 yards. And it's like, he had 3 carries against Albany and then didn't play the rest of the non-con. It's like if he's healthy, you can get a good rotation of him and Phillips and Williams and McNeil next year. Like that's, you're looking at maybe almost certainly 3 straight years of 2,000 yards on the ground.
Gronowski had a total of 26 touchdowns, 10 through the air, 16 on the ground.
And 1 receiving touchdown.
Oh,
27.
Yeah. Right. Can't forget about that.
It's not a stat we're used to crunching there. So, yeah, Mark Gronowski, and that's at the team awards. They picked Mark Gronowski, too, so I think that speaks for itself. Our defensive preseason player of the year predictions, you could certainly make a case for Aaron Gray's, was that, Owen? Mike and I picked Cohen Entringer. The team picked Zach Lutmer, and a guy we talked about quite a bit.
We were close on the position, Mitch.
Yeah.
We just got the wrong player. Because I would say, I mean, you guys probably, right? You just said that Zach Lutmer was probably the defensive MVP.
It felt like it, man.
I'd have to say so, yeah. It's not like they had, the standout defensive player like they've had some years, but I certainly would say if it's anybody, then he was that guy.
There's maybe, I don't know if there's an argument for another guy on that. Aaron Graves, again, maybe, none of their numbers were extraordinary.
Like,
right? I mean, Xavier, you can maybe make an argument for Xavier.
He played well.
Ethan Hurkett's numbers, if you just look at the stats,
it's
are
crazy
wild.
that he wasn't all Big Ten.
36 tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, 8 sacks.
Blocked a field goal.
Yeah.
I don't understand how he wasn't. All respect to everybody who did it. Like Jonah Pace was an all Big Ten guy, honorable mention, but I'm like, you can't find one little sliver for a 2-year captain who put up those numbers.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. So you could make a case for somebody like that. But, yeah, Lutmer was a guy who it seems like his presence was being felt for a bulk of a lot of those games.
And, the fact that he plays anywhere and everywhere and had the pick 6 against Minnesota, had the pick that you thought changed everything against Indiana. And, man, that kid hits hard. You're wondering if he's got a role next year, if one of these transfer wide receivers like Evan James out of Furman isn't the return guy, if he's in that mix too that we kind of heard about on special teams as well. Boy, it feels like, his role is just going to keep elevating. But, it felt like he was your defensive player of the year. Our predictions in the preseason for breakout players, I already mentioned one of mine that I kind of missed on. I feel good about Shire, though. I feel like he, especially Diego Pavia knows who 43 is now. Cohen, I feel like that was probably a good pick for Owen. He definitely broke out. And McNeil, he flashed a couple times for sure.
Yeah, he flashed a couple times. I honestly thought just with the amount of, or the lack, I should say, of breakaway plays, maybe getting, because he has a lot of speed and he looked explosive at times. But, there was a lot of production from the other running backs, so maybe that's this upcoming year. Maybe I'll just keep the same graphic.
Honestly, that wouldn't hurt having him next year.
Although bringing in the FCS rushing leader makes me change that.
Yeah. Who would you guys pick now if you had a breakout play? I'll stick with Carson on the defensive side, but who would you guys pick if you had to pick another one?
I mean, couldn't it be Lutmer?
It could be Lutmer, absolutely.
I honestly would probably say Zach Lutmer is your breakout player of the year. If not, I mean, maybe DJ Vanami makes a late push for that title, certainly. But overall, I think I'd say Lutmer.
I remember. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to finish and say that, he'd been a guy that coaches had talked about for a little bit, but maybe not much known about him coming into the season. And, he really went from relative unknown to a lot of fans to being possibly the defensive MVP.
I just remember I have some friends who don't follow football as closely, and I think it was against Oregon or USC. They're like, who is this guy? Who's this DJ guy?
Yeah,
he's just
Oregon. He had the
ball.
touchdown. He had that on the go-ahead touchdown drive. He had that long 40-yarder on that third and long. DJ was great, particularly in those last two games. I mean, he was dominant against Nebraska and Vanderbilt.
He was against Nebraska, now that I think about it, and I'm like, he scored a touchdown against Oregon.
Yeah,
I don't remember that, and he's like, oh yeah, that's
right. He had that little screen at Rutgers for 20-some yards. We're like, good for DJ Vanami. That's awesome. Way to go. And then, his stock is rising. I like DJ certainly as a breakout. Trevor Lauk just steps in for Mason Richmond and helps his PFF score. With how much stock you want to put in that was crazy. And, I think going into the fall, you were like, okay, Bryce George coming in from Fair State. I was high on him, and then he got hurt. Doetzler got a bunch of praise and flowers from the coaches. Like, all Trevor Lauk did was just show up and be all Big Ten. On the left tackle, and Mason started 50-some games at that spot, and just now you feel so much better about left tackle going into 26. And so, I mean, again, those offensive line guys, unless they're winning the Joe Moore or the Remington, don't get a ton of shine. But man, talk about a breakout of just steadying things and maintaining the standard. I thought Lauk had a hell of a year. It was fun to Iowa's one of those teams where it's fun to watch the offensive line when they put out the tape. When they were Joe Moore finalists, that was a fun watch, that 7-minute reel.
It's funny how college football works because last offseason, I mean, and leading up to the season, it's like, who's going to play left tackle? Who's going to play left tackle? And you felt really good at safety. And now, like, just after 6 months, it's like, who's going to play safety? And you feel really good at tackle.
Yeah.
You got 2 offensive linemen that you for sure know, I think are going to play in the league. And then you got Dotzler's coming in on the offensive line, probably that right tackle spot. And you feel good about that. Is Pieper going to move to center? Who knows? Who's going to be those 2 guards?
Is that Borud kid that transferred from North Dakota last year, is he still with the team?
That's a good question.
Cale Borud?
Cade Borud, I believe.
I don't think so.
You can fascinating podcasting. That
the
one
Clack
guy?
Keys. Looks like he was on the roster for the 24-25 season.
So,
He could be it too. I can't remember it was one of the B writers I remember listening to saying they heard that I guess we'll find out in the spring that they might have Pieper move to center.
That was always kind of the talk, wasn't it? That he would be the heir apparent to Logan. But wherever he plays, Peep's going to be fine. It feels like, for sure.
I think what was shocking was when I heard somebody say, oh, great, Cade Pieper announced that he's coming back to Iowa and not going to the NFL. I'm like, that was an option? This guy.
Borud is not on the roster.
Oh, is that right?
Just a heads up. But that's
he still seems so young. I was barely getting to know this guy. And now it's NFL
he could have. He could have left, but he didn't, so now it's a big headline, and you make a graphic for it, and you get a bunch of engagement. So,
was he getting mocked? I think he was getting mocked in some places, saying he could have got drafted.
But it just felt like it wasn't part of, the actual conversation. And then they're like, yeah, but he's coming back. He's not going to. It's like, okay. All right, sure, yeah, sounds good. But, it'll be interesting to see how the offensive line unfolds. Bold predictions back in August. Let's go to that one here. This is maybe out of the 3 years doing the podcast, maybe the most proud I am of a prediction. I felt really good about this. So total defense, Iowa, I predicted that they would be better than 2024 despite all the losses. Iowa's total defense in 2024 was ranked 20th in the country, giving up 318.4 yards a game. They ended the 2025 season with the number 9 total defense in the country, giving up only 280.4 yards a game. And that was after, Pavia did Pavia things in the second half there, but the number 9 total defense and the number 8 scoring defense a year after having the number 20 total defense and the number 11 scoring defense. Phil Parker, maybe especially the competition they went up against 4 teams that were ranked in the top 15 in scoring and total offense. Just an unbelievable job there. Yeah,
it was really kind of eye-opening. I thought just because you're playing better offenses, better teams, that it would have went down.
Tough.
So I didn't agree with you at the beginning of the season, but obviously would have nailed it. Yeah,
they held everybody. Yeah, it's as he won the Broyles in 23. Phil lost a bunch of dudes. It went up against tougher competition. It got better. It's just it's wild. Really, really cool.
In terms of our other bold predictions, mine certainly was not.
You viewed it as worst case scenario, though. You kind of laid that out. You're like, listen, if I have to make something bold.
And I will say this, too, is something that, as much as we say, again, I was a few plays away from the CFP possibly. It's they were also a few plays away from not making a bowl game, I think.
Rutgers, Michigan State, Penn State, boom.
Exactly.
Those are 3 games in the fourth quarter that if it go the other way, they're 5-8, 7.
5 and whatever, yeah. And don't make a bowl game. So it's that was not. Again, the football season is so wild in that way that you can be a few plays away from the CFP and you can be a few plays away from not making a bowl game. I was just one of those teams that plays to the level of their opponents a lot of times and is going to be in a lot of games, whether a team is bad or good. And yeah, it's hanging by a razor's edge, a lot of those games that maybe they should be or shouldn't be. How close were you on your prediction about Mike about them averaging 30 points?
He was
a couple
close.
Touchdowns away, I think. Iowa finished 29.3 points per game.
Okay, pretty good.
I predicted they'd go 30 points or better. Didn't quite happen, but that's where you want to be if they miss it. Just right below it, a couple touchdowns away. They were 54th nationally, above Houston and just below Illinois.
What did they average? Was it 15 or 13 points a game in 23?
In 23?
Yeah.
Oh man, I wish I had the exact, but yeah, it was something below 18.
So I think we've talked about this too. What also helped the defense is that they played Wisconsin and Massachusetts, who are running away the 2 worst offenses in the country. Massachusetts this year averaged 11.1 points a game. Wisconsin averaged 12.2. That's scoring offense, and they were both last in total offense too. Wisconsin averaged 253.1 yards per game. Massachusetts averaged 247.5. So Iowa played some of the best offenses in the country and played the 2 worst as well. But hey,
Those were literal 2 worst in FBS football, UMass and Wisconsin.
the next worst compared to Wisconsin was Ball State, and Ball State averaged 18.5 more yards per game.
Holy cow. Wow, that's amazing.
So I just want to mention, though, like if Mark Gronowski didn't have, I'm not going to call him the yips, but didn't have like a rough game against Albany, they probably score over 30 points per game because they probably throw a couple more touchdowns in the first half or whatever.
And he had that one to Gill, I think, what was that, third drive or something like that, where he just overshot him, and that would have been an 85-yarder. And then your total offense goes up, your scoring offense, and Mike's bold prediction comes true.
If you want to put a button on the conversation too, 15.4 points per game in 2023. Yeah.
So, man,
come a long way, baby.
Three more points that 2023 offense scored compared to Wisconsin this year.
And you remember just the national joke, like the draft at 325 was? I mean,
you can't put names on
past
stuff.
2 years. Yeah, I know, right?
Shouldn't. They didn't do that in Madison.
Yeah.
The past 2 years, they've gone, what was it, 27, 28 points last year? So, like, it is trending in the right direction. You know, the people still joke about Iowa's offense, and it's just not kind of warranted. It is like if you look back in time to those, couple years where they were really bad. But things are trending in the right direction offensively, and
Wisconsin's
the passing game.
Wisconsin's just got to keep a quarterback healthy. They've got that Colton Joseph guy coming in and out of Old Dominion who was great. He threw 3 picks against Indiana, but he also ran for 2 70-plus yard touchdowns against them. So, but if it's Tyler Van Dyke or Billy Edwards all over again, or who's the kid, Tanner Mordecai out of SMU?
Yeah, Mordecai.
That's been the toughest part for Wisconsin. They just haven't kept a quarterback healthy, especially this year when you're playing Simmons, and it's like, it was like playing Jackson Stratton for a year, right? Like, I mean, it was kind of like, okay, like,
not a bad
good body to have in camp, but yeah, it's and Jackson's still waiting to find his next stop.
Yeah.
Should see where he goes.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that the reason that narrative still stays alive is like just any time that Iowa plays like a close game, it's usually a low-scoring one, and so like they see the 16-13 loss to Iowa State. Oh man, Iowa's offense can't do anything.
That's
they
a good
see
point.
20-15 to Indiana. Oh man, Iowa's offense only scored 50. They still just see those in the national headlines when they're losing, maybe to a ranked opponent or in a close game or a game that gets on the national highlights in the night. They're not seeing the 41-3 win over Minnesota or the whatever it was 30. What they beat Wisconsin 37-0, like those ones, or the Nebraska game 40-16. When you're doing it against a mediocre opponent.
What about Vanderbilt though?
Yeah.
Maybe that's changing the narrative. We got to
I was
wait and
told
see.
you only need 7 points to beat Iowa. Heard that somewhere. Oh boy! All right, well, let's look back at our schedule predictions for the year. I think Mike was dead on record-wise, but the games were kind of all over. We were talking.
Yeah.
We all picked Iowa to beat the team that is now the national champion.
Yeah, I picked them to lose at Iowa State, which they did. I picked them to lose against Penn State because I thought Penn State would be better than they were. Although they ended the season pretty well. I had losing to USC and Nebraska, so two of the wrong picks, but I also had them beating Wisconsin and Indiana, which would have been nice.
It's funny, some of us, at least I can count myself in this number, that kind of look back and be like, oh man, the national people still didn't respect Indiana after they went to the CFP last year, but you and I were among them, thinking that Indiana, that fluke year. What did I have? So I had them losing to. I had the 7-5 prediction. I had them losing to Iowa State, which came Iowa State. I had them losing to Penn State as well. Again, we all thought they were. I did, I guess, predict the losses to Oregon and USC, but also predicted they would lose at Nebraska. And I did think that they'd beat Indiana as well. So one win away from predicting the perfect regular season like Mike did.
Yeah, I was a little off. I went 10-2, 7-2 in the Big Ten. Predicted the USC loss, and I had them losing to Penn State again. I think I said back in August I was like, they're going to lose either to Oregon or Penn State. And at the time, Penn State felt like a wagon, and a lot of things went there. But Penn State gave a tougher game, at least by margin of victory wise, against Indiana. That's a team that's, man, it's so weird now because you're like, oh boy, Penn State's going to be good next year. Like, look what they did this year. Like among all that adversity, it's not even the same roster.
Well, they did beat Iowa last year.
Penn State Cyclones.
Yeah, the Cyclones did.
Yeah, there you go.
That roster did.
That's a funny joke, Mike. That's a real funny joke. It's Iowa's kind of going through the same thing basketball-wise. Like, we're cheering for the Drake Bulldogs from last year, for the most part, right? Like, it's just...
And Cooper Koch.
And Cooper stuck around, too. It's just such a wild... man, they're going to do it in Iowa State this year. I mean, there's 55 different guys on that roster. It's just... I'm really interested to see not just what Jimmy Rogers does with his roster, but just, like, how the fan base responds to a brand new like, are Cyclone fans kind of going to be rooting for Penn State because it's all the guys they've been rooting for? You know, I don't know if Drake fans are kind of rooting for Iowa this year. It was only 1 year for McCollum there, but it's just
that
I only know one major
so
Drake fan, basketball fan, and he went to Iowa with me, so he roots for Iowa regardless. So he's not a good one to ask. A lot of them on Twitter, though, there's a mix between people who still root for Campbell and people who don't like any of the players anymore because they all left.
You're saying
Iowa State.
Iowa State, okay.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting, but they did start off with a really good. They got that Arkansas State quarterback, Rayner.
He's good.
I think he could. I mean, I still think they're going to be an uphill battle, even though
you have at least 55 new guys. I mean, listen, it worked in Bloomington, but kind of like we were talking at the top of this thing, like everyone's going to think like, oh, you can do that and immediately have success. It's a hell of a lot tougher than that. Like, you got to have a mindset. You know, Kirk Cignetti waited until he's 50 years old to go venture off and find his own way. Like, he's got a culture, he's got a standard and everything. Not that Jimmy Rogers doesn't have that. He hadn't been the head coach that long, and was at his alma mater, goes to Wazoo, coming here. It's just tough to get all these guys on board for basically 1 year. We've seen the success, but again, just because one spot can do it doesn't mean the other 26 that try to do it can have the same type of success. It can go real sideways real quick.
There's an old Jerry Seinfeld joke from about 30 years ago where he says, "We're cheering for laundry." And
I keep thinking about that all the time because that's what you are.
Never more true than it is now in the CFP era, where it's like your guys are going all different places, and you hated this guy when he was at Iowa State, and now how do we feel? We loved him when he was at Drake. Now he's at Iowa. Do we hate? That's all we feel about these guys.
I will just play devil's advocate though. Haven't we always just been rooting for laundry?
Yeah.
Like, just players would stay a couple extra years.
Oh, yeah.
I lived in Iowa State, and I went in those buildings sometime. Or I went to Iowa.
Rivals, Adam Haluska went to Iowa State, then Iowa.
Alex
Kylie
Thompson,
Feuerbach,
ever heard of him?
That was a few years before the NIL boom when
It's not to
Kylie
say
left.
that was not ever untrue, but it's like it rings even more true now in the college football landscape just because of the the CFP, or excuse me, the transfer portal and NIL and everything. I'm curious to get an early thought, a way too early prediction, as I call it, when I look at Iowa's schedule. The official schedule hasn't come out, but we know what teams are going to play.
Comes out next week, actually.
Next week. Yeah, we shouldn't have had this podcast.
Yeah, we should have done it next week.
But in terms of the teams they play next year, we do know that. So their non-conference games are against NIU, Iowa State, and Northern Iowa. We actually do know the dates of those, September 5th, 12th, and 19th. They're going to play the Panthers. Then in no particular order, they play at Illinois. They host Nebraska, Ohio State, Purdue, and Wisconsin. And then they play at Michigan, Minnesota, Northwestern, and Washington. A lot of drivable games for the first part. I will say it'll be fun to maybe, if I get a chance, to go visit some new stadiums next year. I've never been to Northwestern's place. The only away game I've covered at Northwestern
they have
was
a
at
new
Wrigley.
place. Yeah, they've got a new place too.
Yeah.
Oh, I almost said dump, but I forgot they're moving into their new place.
Never been to Ann Arbor. Never been to Illinois Stadium. So looking forward to possibly covering some fun away games next year. I doubt I'll get sent to Seattle, but still some good locales. Any early thoughts from that? Any early L's you see on the board?
I just think every time we play Ohio State, as a fan, I wouldn't want the players to chalk it up as an L, but it's just like it's going to be a tough game.
Ohio State's first trip to Kinnick since Woodshed?
I believe so, yeah.
Really?
We played at Ohio State a couple times.
Definitely wasn't 9 years ago. That's wild. That's been 9 years.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, I think that'll be their first trip back.
What's Michigan going to be like under their new coach, Kyle
What's
Whittingham?
Washington going to figure out with DeMond Williams trying to skip town and then getting held? And like, oh, JK, LOL. Like, I'm fascinated what that spring's going to be like there.
Yeah.
And Wisconsin, do they bounce back? Purdue, second year under their new head coach.
Nebraska, are they finally going to get it over the hump now? Are they going to be close to a 10-win team this year?
This is the first trip to Memorial Stadium since that classic, 6-9 game?
Yeah, 9-6.
9-6.
I was at a wedding. Shout out
One of
Jordan
the most
Loperina.
frustrating.
I was at Jordan Loperina's wedding that night, and we were just like, "What's going on?" We're like,
Frustrating
"This is the
games to
perfect,
watch,
perfect
yeah.
Iowa game." But yeah, yep, it'll and always fun to tangle with Brett, right? The old Tiger Hawk on the ankle there. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And again, we're probably 2.5 months out from getting our first look at the 26 Hawkeyes. There's usually some availability way early in the morning for an open practice. We'll get to see Hank Brown and Jeremy Hecklinski, see who can maybe take a lead going into the fall, as well as Iowa looks for a new quarterback, and we get to see all these new there's going to be a lot of B-roll, just like give 5 seconds to that guy go, 5 seconds to that guy go. We'll tackle that when we get there. But yeah, we're putting a bow on the 2025 Hawkeye football season. Still plenty more Hawkeye basketball podcasts to get to. Owen and Mike will be holding that down and always bringing in some guests for perspective. So keep track of the Iowa News Now YouTube channel and the playlist there, as well as wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, just search Eye on the Hawks, and plenty more basketball to go. It is only January. Lots still to happen at Carver Hawkeye Arena, so tune in for that. For Mike and Owen and Erica, I'm Mitch. Those guys will see you next time here on Eye on the Hawks.
At DePaco Credit Union, we value your health and happiness as much as your financial well-being. We encourage the volunteer spirit by providing DePaco employees with the tools and resources to help grow our communities and support the causes that matter to us. We believe that giving back not only strengthens the places we call home, but also enhances our overall well-being. Well-being is the key to a life worth loving. So when you think about yours, remember that DePaco can help you be well.